I'm going to go over all of the day's events on day 159. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the event from the Ukrainian perspective, and then I'm going to look at it through the Russian perspective. So here we go. Here is the Institute for the Study of War and their daily assessment. Russian forces are reportedly continuing to transfer troops from northern Donetsk Oblast to defensive positions in southern Ukraine. The Ukrainians are looking at this like this is a very bad thing, which I would get because, yeah, it's going to mean a bloodier fight. The Russians are probably looking at it like, what, you think you can do that there and we're not going to be able to stop you? Okay, by the way, when I say the Russian position, I mean like the official state Russian position. I don't mean the average soldier's position, and I don't mean the average Russian who is feeling bad that their country is doing what they're doing to Ukraine or that are inundated by propaganda. Okay, the Russian withdrawal of some troops in northern Donetsk Oblast will deprive the Slovians of necessary combat power. Yes, if you're Russia, you're still thinking, yes, but we're 3 times bigger than you. We're able to handle it. The ISW assesses that Russian forces were responsible for the killing of 53 Ukrainian POWs in an explosion at a Russian-controlled prison on July 28th. Just a couple days ago, the Ukrainians are looking at this going, hey, you killed those POWs. The Russians are looking at it like, no, it was a Hymer, however you pronounce that. And it must have been a Hymer attack. And see, here we have evidence. Now, the evidence that they showed was the same evidence, exactly the same evidence, picture evidence that they showed for another claimed attack previously, but they were too lazy to do anything about that. But the Russians actually think that everybody lies. I mean, the Russian government thinks that everybody lies, and they just have to lie more effectively. Okay, let's keep moving. Deadly harvest, recapping Ukraine's grain fields. If you're Ukrainian, you're thinking this is terrible. People are just trying to, get their grain up in their fields as to get it to market, and they're being, having to demine in order to not get blown up. And the Russians are thinking, well, good. This is what they deserve. This is how we. This is just another front in the war. Next. This is just where the fighting's raging. Fighting's still raging in Donetsk region and Bakhmut. And Bakhmut's been under Russian bombardment for the past week. And if you're Ukrainian, this is terrible. The Russians are legitimately making slow advances toward, capturing inch by inch, but they're still moving that direction. And this is terrible. If you're Russia, you're saying it's inevitable. This is what is going to happen. We're going to have our free Donetsk. Okay, next. 46 settlements have been deoccupied in Kherson. And that is true. The Russians are looking at this and going, well, you've liberated 1,000 settlements. You have 2,000 to go, and we're gaining more daily, so good luck. Next. Mykolaiv is still under attack again. Powerful explosions have thundered in different parts of the city. And Mykolaiv has been under attack pretty much throughout the war, and we're going to reduce it to rubble is the way that the Russians would see it. The Ukrainians are just looking at this as just barbarity because you're hitting civilian populations, like firefighters putting out this blaze at the Mykolaiv hospital hit by Russian strikes. Russians are looking at this without pity. If the neo-Nazi occupiers weren't here, and by that they would mean that the illegitimate Ukrainian government, I'm not exactly sure how they got to that, but they're illegitimate and they shouldn't be there, and this is just a consequence of them being in this place. Okay, Ukraine. Grain shipment leaves a Ukrainian port for the first time. And okay, that's okay. You can let your grain go as long as we're able to, if you're the Russians, as long as we're able to sell our grain at port because we have far more of it. 4 additional Hymers have arrived in Ukraine. Now, this is bad if you're the Russians. If you're Ukrainians, you're rejoicing. Now, instead of 12 on the battlefield, I think you have 16 on the battlefield and a promise of 20 total, and that is probably going to keep going. And if you're the Russians, you're thinking these Americans are just prolonging the war, making it more costly, and they're actually behind it. They're going to have the Ukrainians fight to the last Ukrainian because it's a proxy war against us. Along the same way, the Russians have been saying that they have destroyed Hymers, and there is very little evidence of that. The Washington sent 12 Hymers as of July 20th, according to the Secretary of State. The Russians have claimed that they have killed some of those Hymers, and General Mark Miley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said that all systems are intact. But you know, if you're Russia and you're lying about Hymers being destroyed, you're looking at him thinking, yeah, but he's just lying as well about them being intact. And it's just a propaganda war. It's just a different battlefield in the war. So there's the psychological battlefield, there's the military battlefield, there's the political battlefield, and lying is just a part of that. Okay, next, German Mars 2 delivered to Ukraine. If you're Ukrainian, yay, we have more rocket systems. If you're Russian, you're looking at this going, really, the real Nazis are now in the fight? See, this is just more proof that we need to be doing what we're doing. By the way, the LRS Mars 2 can shoot at a range of 70 kilometers or 43 miles. That's nothing to turn your nose at, but I don't think they have too many of these, so it's probably not seen as that big of a threat. Okay, Russia's new naval doctrine. 2 days ago, Putin laid out his new naval doctrine. If you're looking at this from a Ukrainian perspective, you're thinking, what are you doing? Like, you think you're a dominant superpower like the U.S. or trying to rival that? And the Russians are thinking, yes, that's exactly what we're thinking. Putin said on Sunday that he revised a naval doctrine that reflects the change in the geopolitical and military strategic situation in the world. Where are Russians' interests? Well, wherever we want them to be, all throughout the world's oceans and the Caspian Sea. I wasn't trying to rhyme there. It just came out that way. Moscow seeks to promote its interest based on universally recognized principles and norms of international law. Now, they say that, and then if you're Ukrainian, you're thinking, international law? You wantonly violated international law by denying the Budapest Memorandum, which was you were supposed to protect our borders, and wantonly going over our borders whenever you felt like in 2014 and now in a full-scale war. What is seen as the main threat to Russia? The United States. The strategic course of the United States is to dominate the world oceans and the encroachment of NATO military infrastructure. What about overseas naval bases? Well, we're going to build some of those. Will Russia get aircraft carriers? They have one that's currently being reworked, revamped, and they're going to build some more. Will there be a focus on the Arctic? Yes, they're going to use the Arctic as a place to be able to threaten the West more effectively. What are Russia's important regions for Russia? It's including here the Crimean Peninsula, as well as expanding the Black Sea Fleet. And this is one of the reasons why taking the south of Ukraine is so important to Russia. What does the doctrine say about using military force? Well, I mean, if we have an indisputable right to the presence of naval forces and their use in strict accordance with the legislation of the Russian Federation, international treaties, and international law. Now, if you're Ukrainian, you're going, international law. How can you say international law with a straight face? By the way, this article I'm doing backwards. It's because it's from RT. RT is Russia Today, and you can watch Russian television here live, clicking that live button, and you'll see that their propaganda, how they say what they say. Okay, here's a Pravda article. Russia ready to create naval bases in India, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq and Iran because they want to project their naval force. So within the doctrine framework of the new naval doctrine, Moscow announced its intention to create new Navy bases. And where are they going to do it? In the Med and Asia Pacific region, Indian Ocean, Persian Gulf. They're going to buddy up with India and Iraq, and India has been the main trading partner. The two countries have been moving closer politically and economically, and India has actually done more business since February 24th. Saudi Arabia moves away from the USA, and I don't know how true that is, but Saudi Arabia has become part of this Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which includes these countries, and so they're making a case after case about how Russia is becoming more dominant on the world stage. Now, this is somewhat laughable and somewhat true. It's somewhat laughable in the sense that they're not going to be this big competitor, but it's somewhat true in the case that they are really working on these. Lavrov sounds out opportunities about naval bases in the Red Sea. Well, this explains why Lavrov last week was, he's looking at naval bases in Sudan. He was just in Egypt. He was touring these countries, Egypt and Ethiopia, so that he could sound out like who was going to be more amenable to a Russian presence. And again, it wasn't just for economic reasons as trading partners, as it looked like. It's for this purpose as well. Okay, the last article here we're going to look at is Ukraine may leave Donbass in autumn, but the U.S. will stage some other wars. Okay, if you're like me, I'm an American, I'm looking at this like, you started this, right? Like, but the Russians don't see this way. The Russians see 2014 as the U.S. started the Maidan revolution, and they were behind it and instigated it, trying to, pull Ukraine away from Russia, and they started it. And even now, in this current crisis, they see it as the U.S. caused them to do this. The armed forces of Ukraine will leave Donbass in autumn, but the U.S. will organize several other wars. No, the U.S. did not organize the war. The U.S. did not want the war. Ukraine didn't want the war, but Russia will need to reorganize the SBU, Ukraine's security service, a terrorist organization. Again, if you're Russia, you call what you're doing what they're doing. You say you call them a terrorist because you're a terrorist, and it's like a reversal or mirrors, and that's how they are perceiving the same thing. Okay, I hope that helped you kind of get a perspective of how Ukraine sees things, how Russia sees things, and helps you interpret today's events. Thank you for your time. If you got all the way here, please subscribe. I do these daily. Now, this was a different one where I tried to show here's what Russia's thinking, or here's what Ukraine's thinking, here's what Russia's thinking. But I do these daily, and I hope that helps you understand what's going on in Ukraine.